In Chapter 3, Brims highlights developmental milestones that will be relevant for counselors and therapists as they work with children. To begin, I've included some important points that Brims makes in the introduction to Chapter 3. First, she tells us that developmental events are at their peak during childhood, and development progresses more rapidly during this part of life than any other. For this reason, it is important for you to know what the typical milestones are so that you can have a starting place for understanding the context of each client. Second, Brims reminds us that the adults in a child's life must have the flexibility to revise their view of and approach to the child with each new developmental task that has been mastered to maintain a realistic and respectful relationship with the child. This speaks again to your ability to be open and curious, and it is a good reminder of how important respect for the child is. The definition of development, according to Brims, might seem to be a bit different from what you remember from your Comstock text. Remember that Comstock approached development from a relational cultural theory. Brims introduces development from a dialectic perspective. You might be saying, wait, dialectic? Don't I know that word from somewhere? The concept of a dialectic has philosophical roots. The way I think about this is that it is a process of presenting logical truths in the search for resolution. In the case of dialectical behavior therapy, this will combine a commitment to the conditions of acceptance and change with the dialectical process, which is thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. Let's talk about this a bit in class if you'd like. In the context of development, however, the dialectical model indicates that we can see development as a never-ending process that is continuously affected by internal and external factors. In some ways, development will resemble evolution in that there is a continuous acquisition of new behaviors as others are extinguished that no longer serve the individual. The dialectic developmental model takes into account several influences on an individual's development. These include biological influences such as physical maturation, psychological influences such as the development of peer group relationships or experiencing historically significant events such as the equal rights movement for women. Psychological influences on development also include unexpected events, events that would impact any person regardless of developmental level, such as the death of a parent. As we discussed in Chapter 2, cultural influences will impact a child's development, as will any outer physical influences, such as earthquakes, storms, pollution, or threat of war. Your first discussion board next week will be an opportunity for you to explore these concepts further. As you will see throughout this chapter, there are different types of development. These occur simultaneously throughout childhood. Your developmental milestones chart will help you to see the different ways in which children develop. One of the things I appreciate about this text, in addition to the author's writing style, is the fact that she focuses on how to make this content relevant to you all as counselors in training. On this slide, I've included a few quotes from the chapter that are important to remember. Brims divides the remainder of Chapter 3 into discussion of development based on three broad categories: early childhood, 0 to 5 years, middle childhood, 6 to 10 years, and late childhood, 11 to 12 years. As most children will not present for counseling prior to the age of 4 or 5, this is where the author begins detailed descriptions of the developmental milestones in each area. During early childhood, children are becoming independent in a lot of ways. Their ability to move around in their environments is becoming more sophisticated, and they are often able to converse with adults in meaningful ways. Grammar, at least for English speakers, may be a bit awkward for 4-year-olds, but by 5, most children are beginning to pick up on the nuances of spoken language. Cognitively, children are at the stage of pre-operational thought, according to Jean Piaget. At this stage, children can start to recognize perspective, and they are becoming more capable of symbolic play. Their thinking may still be one-dimensional, but they are beginning to develop empathy for others. Emotionally, children are beginning to develop some awareness of their feelings and how their feelings are related to specific situations. For example, I am sad because Billy took my toy. Children have the vocabulary to communicate their feelings to others, but it's not a natural thing for them to talk about. It's still difficult for children to take perspective emotionally, and usually children can only experience one emotion at a time. During middle childhood, children are developing relationships outside of the family, becoming stronger and more agile, starting to develop fine motor skills, such as handwriting and drawing, and team sports are important as children can develop social skills as well as gross motor skills. Children start to develop special interests during middle childhood, and their language skills are being continuously refined. Physically, children are refining and mastering these skill sets. Children begin to understand language in a new way, and they typically enjoy riddles, puns, plays on words, and even word puzzles. They are becoming analytical thinkers and enjoy strategy games. Perhaps tic-tac-toe or checkers would be a good icebreaker activities for children at this developmental stage. Emotionally, children are becoming more complex. Children, by the age of 8, are usually able to experience more than one emotion at the same time, and by age 10, children are usually capable of recognizing the presence of incompatible emotions. These benchmarks will be important for you to keep in mind as you work with children at different developmental stages, and even as you work with children who are moving through developmental stages. Additionally, as children move towards late childhood, they are usually aware of the ways that their environment, like family and school, support emotional expression or not. As a result, children might begin to repress or deny certain emotions by this point in their development. Socially, children in middle childhood move from relying on adult-child relationships for support to peer relationships. Usually, children will prefer interactions with their own gender, and social status is becoming important. Children are attracted to the popular crowd, and these are usually children who are friendly and positively outgoing. Children's moral reasoning is becoming more complex. You might want to remind me to tell you the story of Heinz during class. And gender role socialization is incredibly important at this age. As children move from childhood into adolescence, social issues take a place of primary importance. Entering puberty has become somewhat arbitrary in recent years, especially in westernized cultures, so development during this time might be quite asynchronous. Children are moving into adult-like thinking. The language skills refine significantly as reading comprehension becomes more complex, and their motor skills become more refined as they choose activities based on their interest, such as tennis versus football, or clarinet versus the bass drum. Probably one of the most important areas for us to consider during this stage is cognitive development. This will be one area in which you will need to assess each client in this age range individually and not make assumptions about their own capabilities based on what you read in a book or what your teacher told you. At this stage of development, most children are capable of pure thought, can reason deductively, think scientific method, are capable of symbolic thought, maybe like pre-algebra, and are also able to form hypotheses about their world. Children at this age may already have their own assumptions and biases depending upon other factors in their environment. Children tend to remain in their same gender peer groups during late childhood. This is a time for them to develop their own specialized interests and develop their own internal moral compass. As one example, I remember reading about Abraham Lincoln in the 6th grade. Lincoln is credited with saying, "When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad." This particular phrase stuck with me, and it's been one of my guiding principles in my life since then. Remember that development during childhood is rapid, complex, and unique. Children are generally capable of similar tasks at about the same age range, but every child is unique, and it is your job to meet them where they are. Keep your developmental milestones chart handy, and when you begin to work with children, seek out guidance and resources that you can use. There are a lot out there to help you build a competent and compassionate approach to this very important work.